I have great respect for money.
Tonight, the life and times of Ed Mirvish. From delivery boy to king of the bargain basement, Honest Ed always has a gimmick.
But I've never soaked you yet.
And I think eventually he may mature.
Good evening, I'm Gordon Pinsent. When it comes to selling, nobody beats Honest Ed Mirvish. With his crazy gimmicks, zany slogans, and splashy promotion, he's created a multi-million-dollar business empire. The former delivery boy transformed a tiny corner store in Toronto into Honest Ed's, a bargain basement emporium, which takes up an entire city block. Ed Mirvish also owns restaurants, an art gallery, and 3 theaters, including Britain's historic Old Vic, which he saved from demolition. And that's how the king of the bargain basement got to hobnob with the Queen of England. Tonight, we bring you a real bargain, the incredible life story of Honest Ed. Absolutely free.
Ladies and gentlemen, I present a gentleman who's humble, shy, modest, tough, then resourceful. At the peak of his physical fitness and mental alertness, handsome, debonair, devastated with beautiful young ladies, raconteur, gourmet, witty connoisseur, Mr. Honest Ed Mirvish.
There's no people like show people. They smile when they are low. Yesterday they told you you would not go far. That night you open and there you are. Next day on your dressing room they've hung a star. Let's go on with the show.
I have great respect for money. I think money is important. Without money, it can be very humiliating, embarrassing. I think money is important.
Ed Mirvish is the patriarch of a family empire, which includes his wife Anne and his only son, David.
He has a mind of his own, and I admire that. A real man should.
And I think eventually he may mature.
Ed Mirvish is 83 and still running. The Harvard Business School calls him the quintessential entrepreneur. In the past year, he has published his second book, opened shows at his 3 theaters in Toronto and London, and fed thousands of people daily at his restaurants. But most important to Ed, 6 days a week at 8 a.m. on the dot, he punches in at his discount store, Honest Ed's in Toronto.
Now I get paid.
Ed's a shameless promoter. He has done anything it takes to attract attention to his store, including breaking the law.
The law was that early closing laws or after the war, and you had to close at 7 o'clock. We ran 72-hour dance marathons that went 3 days, day and night. They were very successful. They attracted so many people that had police in the middle of the night that were in Bathurst directing traffic. It was really amazing.
Hi, this is Bob Lane, broadcasting live on 1050 Chum from Honest Ed's Bargain House at Bathurst and Bloor, site of the Twistorama Marathon. It's been going on nonstop for 36 hours now.
And I did receive 6 or 7 summonses, for keeping open, but it was worth it because the publicity was right across the country. And I love free advertising.
Ed has always been the master of free publicity. The wilderness girl mushed her dog sled from Canada's north to Ed's store. That was press for a week. He gave a tractor to Fidel Castro. One Christmas, he stood outside a mission for the homeless and handed out dollar bills. He rode an elephant at Canada's National Exhibition, and his indoor promotions have featured Peter Tosh and Rita Marley. Actor Robert Goulet was given away as a 79-cent dream date.
We had Noah's Ark sail, and the seal escaped and got hit by a train on the lake shore, and that made front page of the Star. So, It was good. And I had fun.
Every Christmas, thousands of people come from miles around and line up for up to 12 hours, regardless of the weather, to share in what has become Ed's most famous promotion. For the last 10 years, Ed and his family have given out thousands of free turkeys. Ed says it's a selfish gesture. It makes him feel good. The goodwill pays off at the cash register. These publicity gestures, along with low prices and business savvy, have developed the massive customer traffic he enjoys. Up to 20,000 people a day spend $60 million a year at this one location. Ed seems to have a unique insight into his customer needs. Like Ed, many of them are first-generation immigrants to Canada. Honest Yehuda Mirvish was born on July 24, 1914, in Colonial Beach, Virginia, a summer resort on the Potomac. His parents, David and Anna, were Russian immigrants from Kiev. His father was a charming dreamer and never a successful businessman. He worked as a bartender for Ed's uncle, Harry Mensch. Ed adored his flamboyant uncle.
I think he always considered himself a Southern gentleman on a plantation. He grew a handlebar mustache.
Uncle Harry owned most of the entertainment on the boardwalk. Colonial Beach was the hotspot for a mainly Jewish community, 6 hours by paddle steamer from Washington, D.C.
When I used to come down here, which would be 75, 78 years ago, nearly 80 years ago, the only thing that I remember that remains is this pier that we're walking on. What has disappeared is that the main thing was the boardwalk. People used to stroll on the boardwalk and talk. That was the life of the whole beach.
Ed thought Uncle Harry's vaudeville style of managing his bars, music halls, movie theater, and hotels was amazing. It was here that he learned you could have fun and make money. Recently, Ed took Anne, his bride of 57 years, for her first trip to his birthplace. They were invited to the yacht club to visit the local historical society, who hope to build a museum there.
And I want you to take this back home with you so that you'll have a few memories of the beach. And here's an article which includes the Crown Hotel, Uncle Harry's Beer Garden, which was later an open-air theater. And so we want you to have this to take back home and you can look through. And of course, this includes what the Crown Castle looks like today.
Colonial Beach has fallen on hard times, and Ed discovered you really can't go home. His memories of Uncle Harry's towering hotel and its vast lawns have been shattered.
And it was a very lively place. Of course, that was in the summer, and it was a summer resort. But I'm kind of disillusioned, because I used to figure this was a real posh, well, the Crown Castle with a name like that. And I really used to figure it was something. My claim to fame.
Right.
There was no rabbi when I was born here in Colonial Beach. There probably still isn't. And I was having dinner with Ruby Keeler a few years ago, and I told her that her father-in-law was my claim to fame. That Al Jolson's father, Ruby Keeler's father-in-law, circumcised me.
Although Ed spent his summers in Colonial Beach, his father moved the family to Washington, D.C. when Ed was 2. Prohibition was hitting America and bartenders were out of work. His father also wanted to be his own boss, so he started a grocery business here in a working-class neighborhood. This was Ed's first retail sales experience, helping the family in the store.
So I spent 7 years here on this corner. This was our grocery store. My dad and my mom were here.
Did you ever help them in the store?
Well, I exaggerate a lot. I tell people I managed it, but I was only 7 years older, so...
You probably did manage
So it'll be interesting to go inside and let's see what it's like now compared to the day when we were here.
Okay.
The store was constantly on the brink of disaster. There was never enough money. The family boiled and plucked chickens in the back. Mom kept the feathers for pillows, and Ed wore sugar bags for underwear. Too much credit was extended to the customers, and by 1923, the store had hit rock
This is
bottom.
my wife, Ann. I'm Ed Mirvish. And we used to be in this grocery store 74 years ago, before you were born. Yeah.
When the grocery store failed, Ed's father turned to his Masonic lodge, and his lodge brothers offered him a new opportunity, selling Masonic encyclopedias in a new territory, Toronto, Canada.
This is a magnificent building. Well, they're a big
He brought
organization.
you there, and I kept you there.
That's what happened.
It was Toronto, 1923, and Ed's father discovered door-to-door selling was a bust. So once again, he opened a grocery store on Dundas Street in the middle of Toronto's Jewish immigrant neighborhood. The family, now with 3 children, lived in 2 rooms in the back of the store. They shared beds and rented the upstairs to a Hebrew school with 50 students. They all shared 1 bathroom. Out on the streets, it was a tough neighborhood, but Ed made a lifelong friend of Yale Simpson.
Well, we had the Mansfield gang along the street. Then there was the Markham Street gang on Markham Street. And that was about it. There weren't too many other gangs around that we knew of, because we didn't travel very far from the neighborhood.
I never got in with the gangs. Against my religion, I was a devout coward. The neighborhood was full of bookmakers and bootleggers, you know. Now it's legal. Now the government's in the business, it's legal.
His father died when Ed was 15. Ed dropped out of school, and as the eldest son, he became the man of the family.
It was, I think it was quite traumatic. Well, the thing is, I was the only one with my father when he died. He died about 2 o'clock in the morning, and I was with him in the back there because my mother had been working all day. Her and my younger brother and sister had lied down to have a nap, and it was 2 o'clock in the morning when he died. And I remember that next door, Kalb's Delicatessen, they were still open because they'd be open late at night. And the woman came in and she was with me, and I remember her taking the Masonic ring off my dad's finger and putting it on mine because she said they might steal it.
Ed was now the proprietor of a bankrupt store. The whole family pitched in to survive.
I would get on my bike, go to the customer, take their order, come back to the store, fill it, deliver it, and then on Sunday go and collect the money.
Ed's mother worked around the clock.
Oh, she had cracks in her hands just like a laborer, you know, from the cold, and she'd sift ashes in the basement for the furnace, and she had a hard life, but she lived till 83, and she worked in the store till she was 83. But I think those days everyone accepted it. You know, there was no 8-hour day. People worked long and just to survive.
We all worked around the clock just before Passover because we had to package up all these orders. Everybody was extremely religious in those days. And my sister had been, my mother laid her to sleep for a couple of hours on a couple of bags of sugar, you know. And all of a sudden she woke up and she yelled, "I did so put the pepper in the order. I did so put the pepper in the order." She was still hard at work even though she was sound asleep, you know.
In 1938, Ed met Anne Macklin, an artist and a singer.
And I met on a blind date. Yeah, she was from Hamilton, and I lived in Toronto. We went steady for 3 years.
The attraction was there, and I remember a widow, and she said, "Oh, my dear, I hear that you met a man you're going to marry." And I said, "Yes." And she said, "Isn't that lovely? I'm so glad for you." She said, "And what does he do?" "Oh," I says, "he has a neighborhood grocery store." And I didn't say it defensively. And her jaw dropped. She was so upset. And I remember saying to her, "Oh, Mrs. Goldblatt, but he's so ambitious." And I thought, you know, isn't it funny that I did realize that?
And I'd probably still be going steady, but her mother said enough. So at the end of 3 years, we got married, and it's 56 years. We're going to be 57 years married now.
Ed said that we would live with his family for 2 months. We lived with his family for almost 4 years.
For 9 years, the family struggled to keep the store going, but it never made money. Ed made a decision.
It didn't work. Eventually, I gave it up because I can see giving credit, not getting paid is not a good business. So that's when we closed it up, and Yale Simpson and I, we opened a cleaning store there. And I gave my sister a job in the store, so she made a wage.
When the cleaning business failed, Ed tried his hand at other things. Nothing worked, and in desperation, Ed approached Leon Weinstein, who owned several grocery stores.
I said, Leon, I need a job. I'll work any hours, any pay. He hired me right away. I worked all night also. I went to the market and delivered all night for him, and then worked in the stores as a fruit manager. It was good experience, all good experience. I think I started at $13 a week, but at least I knew every week I was getting paid.
Eventually, Ann and Ed decided to open their first store together, selling women's fashions. They raised what little money they could, including the insurance policy Ann got from her mother.
That little wee insurance policy, I think of it as blood money, because my mother went without lifts on her shoes sometimes to pay that 40 cents to the insurance company. We took the insurance policy, it was worth $212, to the bank at the corner, and they took $10, charged us a fee of $10 to cash it. So we got $202. I designed the sign that was called the Sport Bar. It doesn't have patience, and when he'd see me waiting on the customers, it would really bother him, you know, because coming from a grocery store where, you know, very small markup, but people know I need sugar, I need salt, you know, and here I'm talking about fabric and color and style and figures, and, you know, it was a new world in a sense for him.
The Sport Bar had one great convenience. Spadina Avenue, Adelaide Street was the garment center, so it was only a few blocks from our store, and it made it very convenient. We could almost live hand to mouth. We'd sell a garment, run down and get another one.
I think he was scheming along then of how to do it a different way. He must have been.
He was. Ed opened Canada's first self-serve discount store. A legend was born.
And there was a fire in one of Kresge's stores in Hamilton, so I bought the whole stock and moved it all into the house in the basement, and that's when it started. The first stock of Honest Ed's came from that fire sale. And in fact, when we had friends visit us on a Sunday, I'd entertain them by taking them down the basement, and they'd go groveling through the boxes, lipstick and all smoke stuff. They'd come up with black on their hands, but it was great entertainment. They loved it.
It was 1948. Ed changed his name to Honest Ed to attract attention. His first ad read, "Our building is a dump, our service is rotten, our fixtures are orange crates, but our prices are the lowest in town. Serve yourself and make money." This brash style worked. The customers poured in. Business boomed with low prices, no service, no credit, and cash only. By the end of the 50s, the store was making millions of dollars each year.
I have never wanted to go public because I believe that I would always like to run the show myself, right or wrong. I don't think it would be fair even to partners to have to put up with me, but especially I wouldn't want people owning shares in my business and telling me do it this way or do it that way. They may be right, but I like to do things my own way, and this is part of my personality.
To Ann's surprise, Ed was now a millionaire.
I read it in the paper that he was. I didn't know. No, really. I read it in the paper.
Driven up to this point by the need to feed his family, Ed, the kid from Dundas Street, had finally made it. His new home had 6 bathrooms in the rich, predominantly Jewish neighborhood of Forest Hill in downtown Toronto. As a kid, Ed had made deliveries here to the maid at the back door. The store is the center of Ed's world. It turns over the cash that keeps the rest of his empire running. Russell Lazar started working in Honest Ed's stockroom as a teenager and is now general manager.
This is where he used to go into the office, and we also, besides his office, even Mother Mirvish used to have a small little dressing area here where she used to change into her uniform and go onto the floor, and for many years Ed met people in this office.
Over the years, Ed's office space has improved. He moved upstairs in 1958 and spent $50,000 on an office designed to impress agents of major brand suppliers. He even arranged a window that allows him to look out over his cash registers. The office is now a shrine to his success. But fundamentally, nothing has changed. He still has no secretary, no partners. And because all his sales are final and in cash, he can keep track of the daily take on notes in his pocket.
It's a pretty busy one out there today. Boy, they're lined up.
It's a big day.
It is, yeah, they're lined up, but the snow cleared up perfectly.
Yeah. Oh, you gotta do $320,000 and some dollars.
It's a busy one out there.
Yeah.
It's a busy one.
I did have a basic philosophy, mainly 3 points. Keep it simple, because I had limited formal training. Go against the trend in order to jar people, and you must fulfill a need.
The store now works as it did when it opened. There's still no service, despite competition from major discount chains.
When you go in their store, a gentleman greets you and says, "Welcome to Walmart. I hope you'll enjoy shopping here. Can we show you anything? Can we help you with anything?" Now, when you come into Honest Ed's, the first sign you see, "Don't bother our help. They have their own problems. Serve yourself and save money."
Ed has 14 buyers for his store who work independently, but they have to follow simple rules of fast turnover.
They have to sell it before I have to pay for it.
It's hard to imagine that some of his merchandise can sell that fast, or indeed how Ed's buyers decide what might sell.
They're tested, you know, the buyers through experience. They won't buy a large quantity of any new item. They're supposed to try before they buy. So they test it, and if it goes quickly, they increase. Like plastic heads of Elvis, you wonder who buys them. Sell all the time, yeah.
Ed's store is unique. Not only does he have 50,000 items for sale, he also provides services uncommon in department stores.
On this floor, we have the optical department, we have our dentist. On the floor above, we have hairdressers, we have an immigration department. They don't smuggle people in and out of the country, but they help a lot of our customers are newcomers, and they're bringing over relatives. They make the arrangement, the immigration department here.
Ed has always represented the leading edge in dealing with the concerns of Toronto's multicultural communities. He throws himself a birthday party every year. Everyone's welcome. Party runs all day, and people line up for hours to enjoy the free food. Ed gives away thousands of hot dogs, drinks, and desserts, along with free entertainment. And then, just to be different, Ed gives away gifts for his birthday.
Is 120 jaar.
Hier achter, 120.
Gemaakt.
Ja. Thank you. Doodje. Nee, gewoon maar. Doodje. Thank you.
Wat weer?
Ja. Thank you. Thank you.
Wszystkiego najlepszego.
O, po polsku?
Ja, szczęść Boże.
Dziękuję. Dobranoc.
Do widzenia, dobranoc.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Well, my mother worked here until she was 83. She worked right up until she died almost. And she would catch more shoplifters than all our security people put together. The big problem was half the people didn't steal anything. You know, my mother, everybody was guilty until proven innocent. Hey, what a happy bunch. Can I squeeze through?
Ed's a hands-on businessman. Twice a week, Ed meets with his buyers to discuss advertising campaigns, store displays, and new products.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
You'd kill him with this.
We put them in our Christmas window.
Yeah, right after the weekend, maybe starting Monday, Tuesday, we gotta start to put that Christmas tree.
At the back of the store, Ed had a problem, but ever the opportunist, he turned it into a plus. He created Mirvish Village, cheap studio space for artists.
He had been told by the city that he could make a parking lot, big parking lot behind the store. And then city changes council, you know, and he's left with these houses, and he's got to do something with them.
Anne has always been an artist, and at the time was studying sculpture in New York. Ed lured her back by promising to build an exciting arts environment for her.
I'll make a Greenwich Village. I'll make it, you'll do it there. You know, we've got these houses to fill. If you move in, other artists will move it in. So actually, when he talks about building this, he did it for me. He did it for me.
Anne and son David represent the artistic side of the family triumvirate. David opened his first gallery when he was 19 and has since become an internationally recognized collector and expert. His early career was threatened by Ed's outrageous foray into art.
Anne took me to New York to the Museum of Modern Art, and I looked at this mattress nailed to the wall. It was split in half. All the insides were jumping out, and the springs. And I'm looking at this mattress, and I said to Anne, Anne, is this art? And she said to me, did you think of it? So I said, no, but if I thought about it, I could do better. When I came back to Toronto, I went to the junkyard, and we had Toronto Engineering at the time. I went and picked up two pieces. One was a governor from a machine with two arms and two balls on each, spheres on each end, and I tempered them to a cold blue. I mounted them on marble, and I called it Cold Frustration. And then there was another very complicated piece of farm machinery, and I mounted that, and I called it Chaos. And I put them in the lobby of the Poor Alex Theater. And Anne came in one night, and she saw the two sculptures there, and the fellow was looking at it, you know, in the lobby. And she phoned David. David had just started his art studio at the time. He was in New York. And she phoned him. He said, David, you better speak to your dad because he's ridiculing art. So David gets on the phone. And he says, Dad, get that stuff out of there. He says, you know, it's no good. I'm just starting up in the business. So I says, okay, but I said, there's a guy looking at a piece. I could have sold it for $100.
I wasn't outraged. No, I thought that, you know, it was not unexpected. My father says it's very hard to be raised by your wife and your son. And I think sometimes we are a little hard on him, but we have a lot to work with there, and we try and shake him up, and I think eventually he may mature.
In 1962, Ed Mirvish, the maverick trader, became a cultural angel. The Royal Alexandra, host to actors from Mary Pickford to Mae West, was to be demolished for a parking lot. Ed, influenced by Anne, bought the theater for $215,000. He spent $500,000 to restore it, and on September the 9th, 1963, in turn-of-the-century splendor, the theater reopened at a major gala, much to the surprise of Toronto's cultural elite.
You're certainly this evening obviously going to have a very full theater. Thanks for saying hello to us.
Sold out. Thank you.
Papa Mirvish, and then Mirvish Feast Save Theatre in Toronto. That sense in the community I grew up, which was a rather waspy, hidebound Anglo community in Toronto of the 50s, was who was this guy? I mean, look at it. This came to Toronto, all that chutzpah and brashness, and took over this Dowager Theatre in downtown Toronto. And there were some people tutting, but all the people who tutted wouldn't give one plug penny or nickel to the maintenance of the Royal Alex.
I did not buy it for altruistic reasons. I didn't see myself, you know, subsidizing anything, because I feel that everything should pay its way. But I did have 5 years And if at the end of 5 years I could not make it work as a legitimate theater, I was free to do whatever I wanted with that property. I'd never been in the theater business, so I didn't have a clue. It is a high-risk, unpredictable business. Some shows make, some lose. For many years, for 20, 25 years, I just bought and sold shows like any other product, and we managed all right.
It was just the most wonderful thing he could have done. And my mother phoned and said, did I know that Ed had gotten the Royal Alex? And I said, of course, Mother. And she said, you know, if I had told her that he'd got me a villa in Provence, she'd have said, now what did he do that for? We wanted to get out of Europe and you're going back, you know? But the theater, it's as if he just rose that many more steps on the ladder closer to God.
Ed fell in love with his new business. He learned quickly, and the Mirvishes became the first family of Canadian theater. David Mirvish became involved, and Ed eventually handed over the day-to-day operation to his son.
Now with David involved, we're producing shows, and that's even more dangerous than what I was doing. But on the other hand, if you get one winner, it can keep you forever.
Well, I take the gamble, but if I lose, then he can live in the trailer with me.
Les Mis was the Mirvishes' first major gamble as producers. Putting up their own money, they joined with Cameron McIntosh in an all-Canadian show that premiered March 1989. The first run played successfully for 63 weeks to over 700,000 people. It eventually grossed $65 million in Toronto alone. Ed has met many major theatrical stars, some of them flamboyant and eccentric, or used to being treated as stars. But the storekeeper from Dundas still thinks of the bottom line.
I don't have a problem. I think they respect me because we meet the payroll every week. And I respect them for their talents. I don't think I stand in awe of anyone, really.
Yeah, one of my memorable experiences in the theater was when Pinter's No Man's Land played the Royal Alexandra Theater, and Sir John Gielgud and Sir Ralph Richardson played in that. At the end of the evening, after sitting through the whole show, it went completely over my head. I certainly didn't understand it. And I went backstage and I said to Sir Ralph, what is this all about? You know, I don't get it at all. What is it really about? And Sir Ralph says to me, he says, I don't know.
Ed saw an opportunity in the crowds attending the Royal Alex and opened a restaurant next door. He served one dish, roast beef. His empire expanded into other restaurants that now take up 2 city blocks and serve over 2,000 people at once. As usual, Ed broke all the rules.
When we first started the restaurant, we called in chefs who were professional chefs. And, you know, they were artists. So I had a man working for me called Tony Falico. He ran our parking lots. I said to Tony, Tony, the roast beef, we have one item. It has to cook slowly for 3 hours. I don't think I need these fancy chefs. You come and watch them. If you think you can do it, then we'll just go from there. I fired my chefs. Now my parking lot attendant is my head chef. And he's been here for the 30-some years that we've had the restaurant. No problems. When we opened our first restaurant, I called in interior decorators, and they wanted us to pull out all the posts. It was a very expensive job, but I didn't use them. We have statues, we have different urns from the Orient. As long as it was cheap, I bought it. Are they looking after you all right?
Oh, great place. Come on out.
Yeah.
Best place in Toronto.
Oh, no relative of mine.
No.
Yeah. I'm
Hey, Uncle Joe, how you doing? Right?
Thank you.
Ed treats his restaurants like his store. Promotion is the key to success. He used to insist that customers wear a jacket and tie. When some complained, he hired people to picket his own restaurant, and then he called the press. As an added attraction, he opened a 20,000 square foot museum, displaying all the props and paraphernalia he has collected from the theater.
Everything's for sale.
Admission is free. The prices are from 5 cents up to $95,000. All the men want to know what's 5 cents, and all the ladies want to know what's 95,000, without exception.
Where you like, girls? Bit of value there for money. You pick 'em, girls, I'll pack 'em. Have a look.
Thank you.
Both socks there, girls, for $2.50.
Ed and Ann went to London in 1982. It was Ed's first visit, and among the traders in the Lambeth market, he felt at home.
Mainly because of the feet. I love this neighborhood. Down the street, the market, and this wonderful theater, the Old Vic, built in 1818 with its long history and great actors.
The Old Vic is the most famous theater in the English-speaking world. It spawned the National Theatre Company, the Royal Opera, and the Royal Ballet. It is considered a national shrine. In 1982, it was up for sale.
I just feel it's as important a building as Westminster Abbey or the Houses of Parliament.
Ed heard about the Old Vic from his actor friends Peter O'Toole and Sir Ralph Richardson. He bought it sight unseen for $1 million.
See you. Hello. And as you know, you've got to wear this for insurance reasons. And our production staff have had this one specially made for you.
Thank you. Wow.
Splendid. Okay, we can go in.
Ed outbid Andrew Lloyd Webber by only $100,000. He promised to restore the theater in 1 year and spent $4 million on the renovation. The English were nervous about a foreigner called Honest Ed, but in true form, he charmed the press and used them to his advantage. Ed kept his word, and the theater was restored to its former grandeur. In 1983, the Old Vic reopened with the touch of Ed the promoter and a royal gala. Ed kept it simple. When he met Prince Charles, Ed told him he was happy that Charles' granny was opening his theater. On the evening, Ed escorted Her Royal Highness the Queen Mother, a patron of the Old Vic. The opening address was given by Sir Laurence Olivier.
This will one day be the finest theater in the world.
I don't like losing money. I'm going to try to make it show up proper. If in the early years we have to subsidize it in order to achieve our goals, we would be willing to do that.
Ed actually subsidized the Old Vic for 15 years, losing millions of dollars. He finally put it up for sale this month. However, at the time, Ed and David had high hopes. They hired director Jonathan Miller to oversee the first season of 7 plays. At the prestigious Sir Laurence Olivier Awards, those plays won 5 awards.
Yeah, look at that. Yeah, let's see. Wow, it's impressive. And they put the Old Vic on all of them. Yes.
Having met most of the royal family, including Prince Philip and Princess Anne, Ed was now about to meet the Queen. She invited him to England to receive a CBE.
Well, that isn't Dundas Street.
At Buckingham Palace, Ed became a commander of the British Empire. He was also given the freedom of the City of London. That means 2 things, according to Old English law. 1, he can take sheep across London Bridge without paying a toll. And 2, if they hang him, it must be with a silk rope. Arriving in style in Toronto, September 1991, Ed and David broke ground on the first privately built major theater in North America in 30 years. The project cost them $50 million and brought together the skills of the entire Mirvish family. Ed's business savvy, Anne's love of the theater, and David's artistic taste. They built it to house Miss Saigon and named it after Diana, the Princess of Wales.
The first time we met her was when she spent an evening at the Royal Alexandra Les Miserables. And we were very impressed with her, you know. She was, we felt then that she was a person of great feeling. We were aware that she worked with AIDS, and what impressed me, she worked with senior citizens. That's where I came in. So I thought this theater should be named after her.
By opening night, Miss Saigon had the biggest advance sales in Canadian history, over $30 million. To celebrate, Ed threw a $1 million bash for his cast and launched himself into his 80s in style. Time is very precious to Ed, and the only time he has taken away from his business has been to go ballroom dancing.
When David was 13, so that's 40 years ago, he was going to have a bar mitzvah. My wife is a natural dancer. She's a good dancer. Me, I was a storekeeper. I couldn't dance. But I saw this big bar mitzvah coming up. There's going to be dancing, and I'm paying for it. And I'm going to sit there and watch my wife dancing with all these other guys. So I figure I better take some lessons. And as everything else, I'm an extremist. 40 years ago, I started taking lessons, and I never quit for 40 years. Next thing I know, I'm going into contests. I go to Chicago, I go to Detroit, and you know, I'm still working away at it. But I did give it up about 8 months ago because, well, first of all, my wife was telling me I should stop doing the lifts. She says, I'm going to hurt myself. And secondly, it was getting embarrassing. People would stop me on the street. Ed, you've been taking lessons for 40 years. You can't dance yet? So I said, I'm a slow learner. What am I going to tell them?
Anne also wonders when Ed will slow down his hectic day-to-day schedule and learn to relax.
I think I always had the idea that I wanted to eat regularly. And that was my main drive. But, you know, and then after you're making a living, but you don't seem to stop. It's like a game.
Then so it goes with David's latest production of Rent.
He's been able to stay in grace since he was a kid, and therefore being allowed to be a kid all the way through. And that's a goal to emulate. If we could all stay kids all through our lives, that's an interesting challenge.
Ed's rabbi constantly reminds Ed that he's not a kid anymore, and that someday he'd better take the time and prepare to meet his maker. True to form, Ed's got an angle.
I've dealt with David Merrick. I've made contracts in the theater. I deal with wholesalers. They're very tough people to deal with. And if I can work a contract out with them, I don't think I should have a problem with God, because he's all understanding, benevolent, and he will understand, I'm sure. We'll work out a deal.
It's not death or the deal that Ed worries about. It's how he'll be remembered. As always, that brings him back to the store.
What I want was to put up a throne in the middle of the store in the drug department and have someone sitting on it. When I die, to be cremated, my ashes are put in an hourglass, and this person sitting in the middle of the store on the throne would turn the hourglass up and down, and that the customers and the employees could point to me and say, there's Ed, he's still running, and that's the way I'd like to be remembered.
Climb upon my knee, Eddie boy. Although you're 83, Eddie boy, you've no way of knowing. Sit on my knee, sit on my knee. There's no way of showing just what you mean to me, Eddie boy. You can sing along. When there are gray skies, I don't mind the gray skies, 'cause you make them blue, Eddie boy. And friends, stand up, you're heavier than you look. They forsake me. Let them all forsake me. 'Cause we still have you, Eddie boy. You're sent from heaven, and I know your worth. 'Cause you made a heaven for me, right here on earth. And when I am old and grady, just promise you won't stray, dear. 'Cause we love you so. Oh.